Welcome to Thinkin Bros. I'm Chris.
And I'm Alex.
We're your favorite corner store philosophers trying to figure out life one conundrum at a time. And today we're going to be demystifying some historical, philosophical
Paradoxes, problems.
I guess. What would you call it? Not problems, but what did I even write in to find it?
I have no idea.
Okay, so yeah, essentially, so let's get right to the first one. Today we didn't really feel inspired to have a specific topic, so we're just gonna be, solving paradoxes that philosophers didn't succeed at solving. Well, like, why not?
Just flexing a bit. So we have about 10 of these, and we're starting off with the classic trolley problem. So the basic description that's given here, for people that don't know, in this ethical dilemma, a runaway trolley is headed toward 5 people tied to a track, and you have the option to pull a lever to divert the trolley onto another track. But this would result in the death of 1 person. Should you actively intervene to save 5 lives at the cost of 1?
Right. So I think an interesting this has been so overtalked in time. So I think the way to solve this is you have to impose a certain philosophical system on it. And a lot of reasons why, let's say, consequentialism, which would predict, let's say, that what are the bad predictions it makes? Oh, like that you should push a person, like in modifications of the trolley problem, it has some problematic conclusions. But the thing is, there is no system that will not make predictions that go against our intuition. And that said, intuitions differ between people. So in fact, even if you choose intuitionism or something like that, it will not have a way to please everyone's intuition. Okay?
Yeah, but just to clarify, intuitively, I think most people, it's been found that most people think that you should push the lever to save 4 people. There's a net saving of 4 people when you...
Yeah, but that's kind of the easy part. Right? That's like the easiest version of the trolley problem. And when it gets interesting is when you, like, let's say there's the footbridge, and instead of pulling the lever, you have to push a large man on the tracks to make the same thing, right? Save 5 people. And now you're like, oh no, well, my fingers are touching that person, and that seems more problematic to me than simply pulling a metal lever, right? So what you have to realize about it is whatever the best solution to it is, it's gonna have haters, it's gonna have opposition. So what we're after is really how you can kind of better society, in my opinion. And I think I compose, so an interesting application of it, there's I think it's Stanford study or something like that. There's a website where you can go and make decisions for a self-driving car. I don't know if you've seen this.
No.
So the car, let's say, can swerve in one of 2 ways. And on one way, there's an old person, and then with a kid. And on the other, there's two adults, right? And then you're like, okay, well, which one should the car swerve to?
I read your paper on that. You made me reread it before submitting it. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, I love that. I think I found pretty good solutions. So of course, what you want is the best for society in that. So here's, how about, interesting future application of the trolley problem would be, okay, if we can accept self-driving cars, it's going to have to make decisions that won't please everyone, but they'll better society. So how about we redevelop that system, right? Where you could use it for self-driving cars. You could use it for trolley problem, right?
Okay.
So obviously, the self-driving car is going to be the one doing everything. So you have to understand that the lever itself is the proxy for you pushing the large man off the bridge. So that's where you're gonna have to accept the responsibility of the self-driving car in any case. Like the fact that it's gonna be an algorithm in which the computer that dictates it, that you're sitting in that computer, right? So in driving that car or being driven by that car, you're going to have to accept responsibility. So let's say it goes into an accident. you're gonna have to. I mean, you might feel more disconnected than if you had driven into someone, right? But you're gonna have to take on some responsibility because it's human to blame ourselves for it. And even though you could, I mean, a rational person could justify as, well, you weren't the one driving it, but yeah, you were kind of, you accepted that whatever consequence it was going to have on the world, you endorsed because you bought that car. So, but I know a lot of emotional people are going to be like, okay, no, my car killed a bunch of people.
Emotional people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just a solution sort of that I read about to the trolley problem is like someone just wrote a paper and was like, okay, the people have been debating this for like decades, and the reason people have been debating for decades and haven't found a solution is because it's a non-problem. The trolley problem is like it's not a problem. When you pull the lever and you divert the cart from 5 people to 1 person, you're doing the wrong thing. Even if intuitively you feel like you're not and you're saving 4 people. And I tend to partially agree with that, because when you reduce, when you modify the trolley problem a bit and you go to footbridge where you have to push someone so that the person dies and, throws the train off the tracks, you're more involved in that action, but you're doing the same thing. What is the difference really between pulling a lever and pushing a person onto the bridge? Or let's say there's another modification that you could take, where let's invent a case where you have to shoot 1 person with a gun, right, to save 5 people. You wouldn't do that, because then you're killing that person, right? But it's the same thing. Like, what's the difference between pulling the trigger of a gun and pulling a lever? Arguably, there's no difference at all, because the effect of both of those actions are exactly the same. There's just a different level of detachment from it. And it's the same thing as you're saying with the cars. You're just more detached because, I just bought the car, the algorithm was approved by the government, so it's the government's fault, right? It's not your fault. And then the government's like, there's been research and the people that coded it assured us that it was fine, and like it was tested and it was fine. And then the people that code it, they say like, oh, but we got approved for it. It's not our fault. And you can infinitely just relay blame, but.
Yeah. But I thought you were going to take another direction that I would like more, and it would be that it's a non-problem because, in fact, if you have the best for humanity in mind, then what you're going to do all the time is sacrifice the 1 to save 5 people.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, technically you could say, okay, but it's wrong to kill someone, you could have that more morally childish view, but no. What I mean is, I think it's a very hard to contest thing to have the best for humanity in mind. And when you take, just statistically, the probability of those 5 people accomplishing more for humanity than that 1 person, it's always favorable if it's 5 random people.
Well, I mean, for someone that hates on consequentialism quite often, that's surprising. There's other factors to consider. Sometimes consequentialism is just wrong.
Well, I think the consequentialism is perhaps the best thing for, let's say, for the trolley problems, because it's mathematical, and the trolley problem is mathematical in its nature. And also, the value that I'm plugging into the equation is not pleasure or anything basic like that. It's betterment of humanity. Again, you can contest what that means, but the problem with the trolley problem is that isn't there a thing where an evil person? Oh yeah. It's exactly the trolley problem if you really if you get down to it, right? An evil person has 5 people caged, and the cage is going towards a pool of lava or whatever, and he hands you a gun and he's like, okay, kill this innocent person, and those 3 people will escape. Well, if you assume that the evil killer is telling the truth, then you should kill that person, right?
Yeah, sure.
So
I mean, I think most people wouldn't, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't have the guts, as you said. Just putting words into your mouth. But no, I think the interesting thing here is, okay, what is wrong? What is right? is killing wrong? I haven't read any convincing argument that it is, right? But let's say, is hurting someone wrong? Let's say I'll give you that, right? Let's say you determine, okay, inflicting physical pain is wrong. Okay, but would you torture someone to get information that could potentially save an entire country? Would the government be morally permitted to torture someone if it could save an entire country for, like, I don't know, nuclear codes? It doesn't matter. And you would say intuitively, yeah, right? So it doesn't change the fact that you labeled hurting someone immoral. It would still be the moral thing to do to prevent harm. And I think that's a discussion we can have in another episode, because Socrates was of the opinion that you should never hurt others because it hurts your soul. And for me, I believe I disagree with that. I haven't thought about it enough, because if hurting others could prevent more harm in the world and you have the best for humanity in mind, it would almost be egotistical to not inflict that pain upon yourself. Right? You see? So it's just saying, okay, let's say killing is bad. Let's say I even give that to you. But could you do bad things if it was justified in certain situations? And in the killer lava cage thing, I'd say yeah. And I know most people wouldn't do it, but that's because they're not, perfect moral robots. It's because they're humans.
Okay, so I guess our solution to this, I would say that killing is bad. Whatever. That's my stance. But then I guess our response to the trolley problem would be that you have to go either one way or the other, right? My take would be that.
Well, that's a non-answer, no?
It sounds like a non-answer, and now that I've said it, it sounds like a non-answer. But I
think it means, like, what's more important to you? And for me, the answer is clear: the best for humanity. And usually, that kind of gives you the mathematical advantage of being like, okay, would you kill 10 evil people to save one good person?
Yeah. Okay, here's what I mean. What I mean is, you either have to, in all modifications of the trolley problem, do nothing because you think, taking action and killing someone is bad, or in all modifications of the trolley problem, commit. And like you're saying, just like, if you're a surgeon and you have to save 5 people because one person needs a heart, the other person needs a lung, a liver, whatever, to live, and you have a person in front of you that's a compatible donor with all of them, you have to kill that person.
Didn't know more than 5 organs, said lung twice. But yeah.
There are 2 lungs?
I know, but you could have kind of used the variety.
Okay.
No, but good point. Good point. And that's a more extreme one. And then, of course,
But if you're going for your view, you have to commit to that and say that's the best for humanity, and you kill the person to give the organs.
I know, and I think in the killer example, it's even more linear. So my view kind of justifies it. But I think in the surgeon example, it's a little bit different, just because there's the right to live, and there's the thing where I understand how structurally it resembles the trolley problem, but I think.
What do you mean right to live?
No,
right to live is not a differentiating factor between, evil person and surgeon.
Right, I understand, but it's like, if the people, it just changes something in my mind. If the people are already in that cage or already tied up to the chair and in front of me while I have a gun, that kind of puts them on a different level for me to give me the right, because in that decision, it is really, okay, this person is, there's really A or B in that situation. For the surgeon thing, I think the specific example you're referring to, usually there's like an unconscious person, so it is really like A or B. But I'm not saying, like, if 5 people are in need of organs, I wouldn't say it's justified to go on the street and kind of get a person and harvest the organs and save 5 people. That's what I don't think should be good.
Well, I think you have to restrict situations, like restrict the
thought experiment.
You restrict the thought experiment in both cases, because in the case of the evil wrongdoer, you can say, oh, but how do you know that if you kill the person, you can trust the other guy and he won't throw the people into the lava? You can sort of wiggle your way out of it, and I think you're wiggling your way out of the surgeon thing, when in either case you have to restrict the situation to where you're forced into this choice.
Right, but okay, let's say there's like a coma patient, and it is really like, let's say in the next hour you could open up the coma patient and you could save those 5 people with difficulty, but I would argue that you should do that. And again, the reason why we very strongly feel that that shouldn't be the case is because we have such a, protective thing about life and this difference between life and death and
so
killing.
Weird, right?
It's not weird. I'm just saying it's something.
But I mean, I don't think you have to have the unconscious thing. You just have the person in front of you. Why is the unconscious thing?
Just because they're kind of laying there and they're an option. That's what I mean. You feel me? Like, it's just, you know how in the trolley problem the person is tied to the rails?
Yeah.
That to me is different than, okay, or some guy is just sitting at the end of a footbridge, right? It's not like, oh, I'm gonna like take a cake in my hand, lure a fat guy from the street, and then save those 5 people. It's A or B, you see?
Okay, well, why is that different? If the ultimate factor you should consider is the well-being of humanity, you should, I consider killing to be evil, then that's one evil you're doing, which is arguably, well, in my mind, definitely worse than, luring the person with the cake. Why should you forego luring the person with the cake or, chasing down a compatible donor?
Why? That's a good point. I mean, in our society, usually because I guess there's a list of people waiting for donors. It's not like, oh, people put themselves on organ lists when they die. It's not just that. I agree, but I think it's a leap from there are 2 tracks with people tied to them to I should go to the street and kill an innocent bystander to harvest their organs to save 5 people. It's just, there's kind of a disconnect there. And the unconscious thing, if you give me that's the example you want to use, yes, I'm, again, with difficulty because it goes against my intuition, I would argue that you should yeah. So again, what's more important to you, moral responsibility or betterment of humanity? And as for the self-driving thing, I can go quickly over it, right? Like, you remember it. Age doesn't matter because of 2 reasons. Albert Einstein from 60 to 80 will probably accomplish more than me from 0 to 100 years. So that's something. Then if you have a 34-year-old and a 35-year-old, you have to apply the age thing to justify your choice. And that becomes very different when you restrict it to that, right? As the ages approach, the age argument goes away. So essentially, if it's an old person, if it's not an old person, you should never be using age in the self-driving car decision making. After that, gender, obviously not. What else? What else is there? I guess
socioeconomic status.
Yeah, well, okay, that's, I mean, imagine even asking the question. That's ludicrous. I think after the kind of societal differences settle, which I don't think much should be considered, maybe ex-cons, there could be an argument made for that. But the main thing is here, you respect the law. So if someone is jaywalking and you could swerve into, let's say 5 people are jaywalking, and you could swerve into a person who's on the asphalt or sidewalk, yeah. Thank you, and 1 person, I think you should go through the 5 people jaywalking because legality should be kind of number 1. And if you program every car to be legal, then everyone will know that as long as you as a pedestrian respect the law, no trouble will arise. And I think that's a pretty good thing to have. So law, then I guess numbers, and also I think I had the thing where if you know you're only going to cause injuries, it could be 100 injuries, but it should never equal a human life. Mm-hmm. So I think an infinity of injuries is not worth a human life. So if you know you're going to injure 3 people, always do that instead of killing 1. Are there any other factors to consider?
Yeah, isn't there, diverting your path versus staying on what you're already doing?
Oh yeah, that's a big one. So if both things are legal and yeah. Always choose passivity if all other things are equal. So you can go left or right, and
you can go forward or swerve. No.
Okay, so let's say it's only a thing where you can go left or right, and on both things, on both paths, two people are jaywalking, right? So they're illegal in the same to the same extent. And in that case, if you were going to turn right, you turn right. I mean, I know it's not really passivity. I know it's more so, passivity is more so like if you were going to go forward, keep going forward. But, you know, if all things are equal, you should choose not to swerve. As in the trolley problem, if one person is on one track and another person is on another track, if you're already going on one track, you shouldn't swerve tracks. That's it. And then the last thing is to calculate every life inside the car the same as lives outside the car. And the beauty with that is you're going to have the presupposition that whatever person is in the car is respecting the law. So after that, it only becomes a question of, you know, number of human lives and whatnot. So if you have 3 passengers and you, of course, so 4 people in the car, and then there are 3 people in front of you, you're just going to keep going instead of like swerving into a pole and killing everyone in the car. So I think that's a pretty good system that's kind of hard to counter argue. Move on to the next.
Yeah, sure.
Or, unless you're unsatisfied.
No, just to conclude, I guess for this one we disagree. We just go to like opposite extremes. I would say that it's a non-problem in the sense that, you know, pulling a lever is the same thing as choking someone out.
And we agree on that.
Okay, sure, but
I just don't agree on the fact that that's a bad thing.
Yeah, right. But you should like go all the way with what you think instead of like changing depending on what your intuition is telling you for each thing. You know, no matter how detached you are from the situation, whether you're pulling a lever or pulling a trigger.
Yeah, and the cool thing with that is that you can graduate. You can put it into
rank order.
Not really. You can just make it eventual, right? You can do press a button, pull a lever, then there's a rope attached with the large man. You can cut the rope, but you're not touching the guy, right? Then you can push the guy. Then you have a gun, right? And if your intuition changes through that, there's a problem because it's not your intuition you should be following, right? I think that's a pretty good conclusion.
Okay, next problem is the ship of Theseus.
Oh, we love that. Okay, so yeah,
this thought experiment explores identity and change. If all the parts of a ship are replaced over time, is it still the same ship? If not, at what point does it become a different ship? So basically, if you take a ship and then, let's say each day, you take a year and each day you replace one part of the ship, right? You take the mast one day and you change it for another mast. You take like this plank of wood and you change it for another one. You take the cannons and you change them for other cannons. At the end of that year, when you've replaced, you know, all parts of the ship, when it's like a, in quotes, completely new ship, is it a new ship or is it the same ship?
Yeah, and at what point? And the best answer to that is it doesn't matter, right? I think it has interesting implications for 2 things, and it's ownership maybe, and also. What was the other? I mean, just humans, right?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, yeah.
Right. So as for ownership, let's say you have a car and then you replace. I don't even know. Maybe I'm not even right that it has interesting things about ownership. Like if you have a car and you replace all its parts, it's still your car in that sense. So it doesn't really matter. And you know, if you do think that the ship is the same ship, right? Okay. But it has all the different parts, but it has the same structure. So it's about structure. If you're a structuralist, well, if you do the exact same thing, but you keep the original ship fully, and then you build the exact same ship with the same structure next to it, with all the parts that in the thought experiment were going to compose the original ship. Mm-hmm. Well, then you have to say that those 2 ships are the same ship.
Exact same ship.
Yeah, so you're done. And if you're a materialist, which would mean that you say there's no ship,
there's no
the
ship
doesn't exist. If you're a conspiracy theorist, no. But if you're a materialist and you say it's not the same ship, then that's kind of also hard. But whatever it is, the implications for ownership are going to be the same. It's still going to be, I guess, your ship.
Just to develop on the materialist, if you say it's not the same ship, right? At what point does it become not the same ship?
Right, the last part or something.
Yeah. When you change one piece of wood, is it not the same ship anymore? And I think ultimately it doesn't matter, because even if you say, okay, it's not the same ship, it's been replaced. Like in what parameters is it not the same ship?
Exactly. Does it matter? It's still yours, and it also still does the exact same things because it has the exact same parts. And I guess the two big arguments could be like, okay, when 51% of it becomes another a ship composed of other parts, not the original parts, or until the last part. And in both cases, that's kind of like just a bad argument. But we're also just summarizing the popular takes. The good take is it's not really a problem. It's a non-problem.
Yeah. Well, you talked about the human implication, right? There's if you go deep into philosophy, there's arguments about if there's a continuity in your life and who you are, right? And in what sense is there a continuity? So I was born, and I was, when I was a little baby, I had none of the cells that I now have. I mean, actually, I had neurons, right, that keep constant and that are the same. But my skin cells, my organ cells, other cells, everything gets renewed. Some faster than others. The cells of the tongue get renewed faster, and then skin, and then everything just gets, your hair falls out and new hair grows out. And then there's an argument where you can argue that you're not the same person you were at your birth, although it seems like you're continuous, in your mind. And what do we say about that?
Yeah, so, okay. Because everything in your body changes, the only thing that's left is kind of the core of your brain, the neurons that are there from day one. So you're like, so okay, that becomes an interesting consideration when we learn about brain transplant. So that's the only way where it's interesting to ask, okay, what is continuity if I can now transplant a brain from one body to the other?
Right. If my brain and nervous system, which are, well, I'm pretty sure the only things that don't change, right, are transplanted into another body, which has the same proportions and has the same, height, so it doesn't change much. And then I'm in a new body. Am I the same person, or am I not the same person? And yeah, we were talking about this the other day, and what I said was, go ahead, transplant a brain into another body and see what happens. Until then,
yeah, it's just a question that will answer itself through time. It's only interesting application will literally answer itself through time. But here's the answer. If you want a sneak peek at what it's going to be, the way your brain is structured is affected by your body and your sensory experience. So let's say you've lived with a wingspan of 82 inches, and now you have 80 inches as a wingspan. The moment your brain is transplanted into another body, or buddy, as Alex said, everything starts to shift. And eventually you will become less and less yourself. So what's going to happen is, the next time you pick up a mirror, your whole reality will be shaken, right? Because for the first time in X years, you're not going to look like yourself. Your arms are going to be different. Your fingers are going to be different. Everything that you see is going to be different. And the only thing that will relate you to the past you with time will be the memories. And even those kind of fade. Wow, I don't know. That felt pretty poetic. But what I'm saying is, if you want an answer, which, hey, the answer doesn't matter, and also it will be explained in time. But if you want an answer, it's going to be this. At the beginning, you can say you're still yourself in another body. But with time, that will change. Because also, our personality is shaped by our body, right? People who are attractive are treated very differently, right? The attention they get, the looks they get, the things that are said to them. So in our interactions with others, which is what shapes our brain the most, that's like everything's going to change. So yeah, if you make a clone of the same body, just literally clone the same body, my body. Okay, well, that's not even interesting. But you take it and then you remove the brain from one and you put it in the other, then I'm going to be myself. But yeah, if you want an answer for continuity, I don't know why You're probably a sci-fi freak, but hey, here it is.
Yeah, I was going to bring up sci-fi too. I think this sort of matches our disinterest in sci-fi because
it doesn't exist.
Well, I hesitate to say that the implications are sparse because, there were a lot of movies about AI, and now AI is becoming more real, and at what point does it become sentient, etc., etc. But it seems like with this question, not only because cloning is so far away if it ever happens, but also just because in this case, our intuition brings up zero problems. Our intuition is that we're a continuous person. Our mind stays continuous even if all our cells change. It doesn't matter. You stay in the same body. What problem does our intuition bring up? Zero, right? Legally,
exactly.
Morally,
like legally, what's gonna happen is if your brain is transplanted, you're gonna get a new passport or whatever, and it's gonna have your name if you choose to keep the same name, and it's gonna have your record, your criminal record, and it's gonna have your new face, and that's kind of the only implication that is important systematically or systemically, right? That's it.
Doesn't really matter. Okay. This one, okay. The prisoner's dilemma. This scenario in game theory presents a situation where two individuals must decide whether to cooperate with each other or betray one another. It raises questions about trust, self-interest, and cooperation. So, if you want to lay out a prisoner's dilemma example.
Yeah. So two people are stuck in different rooms. They can't communicate, and essentially, if both people decide to snitch, then they're both getting half sentence,
right?
Half of their sentence. If one person decides to snitch and the other doesn't, the person who snitched will be free and the other will get full sentence. And if both people don't snitch, both people are going to be free. So what I have to say about that is, yeah, I think people abuse thought experiments and make them fun and everything, but here it just depends. Well, it has two implications. Who are you stuck with? If I'm stuck with you, I know what I'm going for.
Yeah.
Right? So it depends on the person. Now, usually the way it's presented is it's a random person, you don't know who it is. If you assume that there is more good than evil in the world, then I guess it's not the safe bet. The safe bet would probably be to snitch. But the thing you could do if you assume there's more good than evil in the world is kind of put your faith into that and not snitch and hope that the good will prevail. And they're going to do the same thing. Now, I'm a pessimist as described by others, a realist as described by myself. So I would definitely snitch. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I think it's known that I have more hope in humanity, and I don't know. Seems just like the situations aren't as simple as we described, because in a real prisoner's dilemma, you don't know that the person is in the other room and they've been given the exact same deal, etc., etc., right? I think just generally I have faith that people are not stupid and that we both desire the best result, and the best result is only attained by not being a snake. Okay, I'll skip one.
Why?
Sorties paradox. The paradox of the heap. This paradox raises questions about vagueness and boundaries. If you remove one grain of sand from a heap, it's still a heap. If you continue removing grains, when does it cease to be a heap?
Yeah. So I use that argument a lot, right? Just previously for the age thing for the self-driving car, I used it, right? You reduce gradually, and when you get to between the difference of, I don't know, 40 grains of sand and 41, which would 41 would be considered a heap and 40 would be considered a bunch or something. It raises problematic questions. So what I like to do in that is to simply eliminate the need to ask the questions like I did with age, or the only way where I see that being important is legality, right? I guess, I don't know, the age of consent, for example, right? You have to, there are a bunch of arguments that could be made that, our brain isn't fully developed until 25, or in some countries, the age of consent is 16 or whatever. And the answer is, once again, every paradox is kind of that. It doesn't matter, right? You set something reasonable that a lot of people will disagree with, but if there is an argument that can be made for it, and maybe it's the one that can be the least denied, right? Maybe you take a survey, let's say the range between which the arguments happen is 40 and 60 grains of sand, and you test every single one, and the one with which the people have the least problem is the one that you're going to pick, right? Even if there are, like, let's say there are 20 categories of people, the believers in 40 grains of sand, the believers in 41 grains of sand. I mean, for the heap definition.
Yeah.
The thing that's going to arise here is that the one that's going to get the least resistance is still going to be like, maybe 13%, like at best, right? 13% of people are going to agree with it, right? It's
however, if the answer is 50 and 13% of people agree with that, and that's the most, the people that said 49 and 51 aren't going to have a problem with it being 50.
Exactly. They're going to be in the same camp. And this is where maybe like you can take the age of consent of being from, let's say, 16 to 25, where the arguments could be made. Or maybe, let's say, I don't know, legal voting age, or what's the other thing? Alcohol consumption. You're right. If you take alcohol consumption being between, well, I know in some countries it's less than 18, but let's be optimistic. 18 and 25. Is there 25? No, whatever. I think you can't be a president of the US before you're 35. Something like that. So essentially, however many categories there are, there will always be, the flat earther that doesn't agree with you. You take the thing with the least opposition, and indeed the surrounding categories, which are probably in the neighborhood of the same opposition, right? If one of them got 67% resistance, the next one over is probably going to have 67. I said 87.
You said 67. Yeah.
Okay, but let's say 67. The other one's going to have 75% resistance, and then the surrounding categories is going to kind of create a normal distribution where you choose the path of least resistance. Yeah, if you need to determine how many grains of sand create a heap, usually in life it doesn't matter, because when you see a heap, you're going to see a heap. For legal reasons, it does matter.
Yeah,
and the process we described is the best way to go about it.
I agree. My comments were going to be much more brief. I was just going to say, just pick a number. 120 grains of sand create a heap. Less is not a heap, more is a heap, and then you set an upper bound to that too, and then that's it. Okay, there's Zeno's paradoxes, I guess, but Zeno of Elia presented a series of paradoxes to challenge the concept of motion and change. One famous example is the dichotomy paradox, which suggests that to reach a destination, you must first reach the halfway point, then the halfway point of that. One. Okay, why?
And this is the thing about, I think this is the thing about hyper-rationality. And it brings up an interesting thing, but
just to make it more clear and easy to understand application of this, well, I hope easy to understand, is Achilles chasing a turtle. So when...
No. The easiest is you shoot an arrow, and with time, it's going to cover half the distance between itself and the target. And then in another frame of time, it will cover the half distance of that. And then another frame of time, it will cover the half of that. And the thing is, if you push it to infinity, the arrow never reaches the target because it's always only covering half distances. Yes, that's the easiest part. I don't think that, I didn't understand the turtle when it was explained to me.
You didn't understand? But
I had to go through it again.
I mean, I guess this one just doesn't seem like a problem. Anyway, yeah, I think you're right. In both cases,
both aren't problems.
Yeah, both aren't problems because, okay, the one you just described is the easiest one. You shoot an arrow, and then half the distance is covered, and then, okay, in the next amount of time, another half of the distance that's left is covered. So 1/4 of the distance, and then 1/8 of the distance, and then 1/16 of the distance is covered. And you could keep going, and you reach the conclusion that the arrow never reaches the wall, which, I mean, obviously intuitively doesn't make sense, but the answer to this is, when you've gone far enough, the instances of time you're moving are 1 millisecond, and then half a millisecond, and then 1/4 of a millisecond. You go down into infinitely small periods of time. The solution is just go the time it takes to cover half the distance between the arrow and the wall twice, and then you've reached the wall.
Yeah, okay, look. So so the actual lessons from this is, if you think you've thought your way into a paradox, either it's not a paradox, it's a not a problem, or you must think about it more. And in Zeno's case, you might think it's like, oh no, it's just intuitively I know the arrow is going to reach, so whatever. So yeah, you could see it like that. And the other way to see it is, well, modern mathematics has an answer to that, and Zeno just didn't reach that level. But I think it highlights a big problem of philosophy. Sometimes philosophers, like, I know Zeno had the intention of doing this, so this is reasonable. His point was to say, oh no, my bad. No, Zeno's point was that our senses lie to us, and reason is the only thing that exists. And if you use reason, you know that the arrow never reaches the actual target. So here, the problem. Modern mathematics has an answer to that. And another problem is that Descartes did the same thing, right? He got so stuck up on the doubt he might have about reality and senses that he forgot that he can be sure that he touched this glass of water. And here is how you explain that. Not like the people in our class. The difference between... So essentially, Descartes famously said, I think, therefore I am, but that's the only thing that he couldn't be skeptical about. But here's a way to not be skeptical about more things.
The explanation for us not knowing that this pepper grinder is here is that we may have had like a dream where we feel like a pepper grinder is right here next to us, and we're doing a podcast, and I'm touching it, and I feel it on my hand. And in a dream, that seems just as real, but it isn't. Like, we all agree that it isn't. And so how do I know that right now I'm not in a dream imagining the pepper grinder?
Right, and this might sound like a smarter argument than Zeno's, but it's not really. Essentially, what you have to think about is, Descartes doubted the existence of the external world. But here's the difference. If you meet a lion in a dream, it's going to do something, okay? Whatever it does. And then you're going to wake up. If you meet a lion in real life and it attacks you, you're going to have to live the next 70 years without a leg, with intervals of sleeping and then waking up and living in the real world without the leg. So here's your difference, okay? That's all I have to say. It really is as simple as, yeah, that's cool, but we're here right now, right? It's that simple. And again, I think Descartes was walking on eggshells as to the existence of God, and that's why God is contained in his philosophical argument, which I think is a problem in itself.
Yeah, I have an intuitive problem with Descartes too, but I think the way I would explain it is just, the certainty of the physical world is through agreement between people, right? I'm not relying only on myself that this is here. I have you too to say that it's exactly there. And then again, I could be imagining you, but I guess
I could exist in a dream, but also the only place we can really have a conversation about the other world, aka dreaming, is this world. So, I mean, I guess it comes back to reasoning too, right? Like, I think therefore I am. Well, we're thinking right now. Do you really do can you do considerations in a dream with another person? Again, he was like a lucid dreamer. Does his argument fall apart if you don't have dreams like that? Like, my dreams are, flying lions and cotton candy. What's, he was such a vivid dreamer that.
Well, no, he wasn't a lucid dreamer. A lucid dreamer is someone that can realize they're in a dream while they're in a dream and do whatever they want. So I thought of that example when we were talking about Descartes. The whole dream thing goes out of the window if you just say there are people that are lucid dreamers.
Descartes for English people, sorry.
Descartes, yeah. And this discards his entire argument. There are people that are lucid dreamers that can realize they're in a dream while they're in the dream, and not wake up and just do whatever they want.
Yeah, that's almost a counter argument to. I mean, it definitely is a counter argument to Descartes. Yeah, man. I guess. Yeah. You know what's the cool thing? I guess I'd say my conclusion on that is it's cool that you're thinking all these things up, Descartes, if you can hear me. But you're writing about them while you're awake. Right? So, yeah, I mean, again, that comes back to thinking. Maybe he's right, whatever. It doesn't really matter because we're talking about it in the waking kingdom. So
I think our problem often comes back to the practicality of it.
Exactly.
Ultimately, it doesn't matter if I exist or not, or if I'm in an experience machine. Proposed by philosopher Robert Nozick, this thought experiment questions whether people would choose to enter a machine that provides any experience they desire, even if it means disconnecting from the real world. So, the thought experiment is, if you had an experience machine in which you could connect, basically Matrix style, and that machine, you could program it to give you any experience you want, right? You want to be rich and experience pleasures for the next 3 years. You plug yourself into the experience machine and you go into it. You have no way of telling the difference until you wake up and get disconnected from the experience machine. Would people go into that or not? And then some people raise their hands, some people don't. I definitely wouldn't connect myself to an experience machine.
Yeah, I have a pretty good answer to
that. Just one thing people said in my class was like, yeah, but how do you know you're not connected to an experience machine right now? And you're not, in a dream world right now? Yeah, it doesn't matter. And then if I am in a dream world right now, why would I go one step deeper into the dream, into another dream? Like, I just want to live my life right now, whether it's real or not,
Philosophy undergraduates are perhaps the people weighing down the average IQ to a 100. I'm pretty convinced the average IQ of society is 110, and all these philosophy undergraduates are weighing it down.
I mean, I don't think that's a good conception of IQ. But
quote me on that. But yeah, the answer is quite simple. If you're going to the machine, I want to guarantee that I'll die in the machine, and if I have to even live one day knowing that I didn't actually live that life, then don't connect me, because if you're going to die in that machine, that's literally your life. That is literally your life, right? Like, oh, I want to be a king, blah, 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 all these things. Yes, I want to do it. But if I have to come back, like wake up from it, even for one day, and you could just think about it as a dream, right? Imagine you're in a coma, you're a coma patient, and then you have a life, like 70 years in a coma, where you're dreaming up the best life possible. The problem is with that, you're going to have to wake up one day and face the fact that you've never lived that life.
Yeah, but the argument is, why does that make a difference? You experience those things as real while you were there, and then you wake up and you can go plug yourself back into the experience machine and have amazing experiences again.
You can plug yourself back up. It's just the reason you get up from bed from a good dream. It's because it's time to get stuff done in the real world. That's it. It's practicality, really. It's
just my conception of real life and fulfillment and happiness contains so much pain within it also. Like, I don't think I would be happy if all I did every day was just happy experiences and shooting up dopamine, and then just doing happy things. Part of the pleasure of life and experiencing hardships and then going through those and coming out the other side. And so going into an experience machine where you could only be happy, if that's even conceivable, isn't desirable to me, because I don't think that, provides me with the most fulfillment.
Yeah. Augustine talked about that. I think it's the saint. I think it's he described happiness as the return on investment of risk that you put into your life, and the only reason that has a positive value is because of the possibility of the opposing negative value. So the only reason love feels so good is because you could have been heartbroken. And in fact, yeah, it's just, I thought about this thing. I thought about doing a mental experiment. No, I thought about doing an episode about how if they make horrible consideration, okay, but if they make a perfect robot that represents the human body, and then a perfect AI that could represent a girlfriend, the AI robot girlfriend would be a real girlfriend. Right, literally, because she would have the same emotional response and the same it's a perfect AI, right? And the same like physical touch aspects or whatever. But the reason why you might have the intuition that's not the case, and then you shouldn't buy a girlfriend robot, is that there's no risk associated to it, is because you know that that's never going to go away. And the little thing in the back of your mind is going to be saying, this isn't true happiness because there was never the possibility of unhappiness, and that's it.
And then, in the experience machine, you could program yourself going through hardships and, being challenged and then coming out on the other side better. And then you could, then there's a counter argument to that. And then you can tweak the machine to get it better. And then there's a counter argument to that, etc., etc. And then if you approach them infinitely, then the experience machine doesn't matter, because, maybe I'm in an experience machine right now. I'm not going to go one level deeper, as I said. It's...
Yeah. I think the biggest thing then becomes, like, imagine you live your next 80 years of life, right?
Yeah.
Okay? I go back in time with you, and I ask you, okay, I've programmed the experience machine to play those exact 80 years.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
And then the differentiating factor will be legacy, right? Let's say you're a famous author. The books that you wrote were in a Matrix-like program. Whereas here, we're doing some of this stuff with the hope that we'll be remembered throughout time, right? A lot of what people do is what's the most certain thing in humans? Death. So what do we always try to do? Leave a legacy. That's why, that's why people have kids, blah, blah, blah. So the only thing that humans can't do is be immortal, so we try to be immortal through our work, through our kids. And the big difference between doing everything, right, like working for, I don't know, 60, 50 years in that experience machine, even though it's fulfilling, even though it has some failures, even though it genuinely makes you feel happy, would be the legacy you're leaving on this world.
Oh, the counter argument to that is that when you're in the experience machine, as we may be right now,
for that whole time you're going to be thinking that you're living a legacy.
Yeah. And the problem comes when you wake up and you realize that that's not true.
So again, if I'm made aware of a free ticket to, the next 80 years of my life, but I have to face that, and even then, even if you don't wake up after, before you make that decision, you have to be aware that you're not going to be leaving a legacy you think. But that's easier to accept, though, because you're just going to die in it, and you're going to live the best life that you want.
I was going to say,
experience machine, yes or no?
Okay. I was going to say, the solution to this is just like, if you feel like your life is real right now, live it and don't ask too many questions. But then in the Matrix, people don't ask too many questions and they live as slaves for the robots and whatever.
No, if you're a Matrix theorist, stop. Just keep whatever. You know what? Think about that. Is that what you want your legacy in the real world to be? Because this is the real world. Wake up. So, okay. The answer is, if I can die in the machine and make myself believe that I've had the best of life in a programmed way, sure. I kind of do it because it's easy. But I wouldn't know that it's easy as soon as I go into the machine because it's going to feel real. And if I have to even face one day the fact that I'm not going to leave a legacy and that what I have done is not real, and I'm living in true predetermination, then I wouldn't do it.
The solution to, the matrix debate of are we in a matrix right now, whatever, is just like live on the basis of the fact that you're in the real world right now. Because what else are you gonna do, dude? You're not gonna disconnect from the matrix,
Yeah. As far as the theories of matrix has like pushed itself, what it's never gonna reach, likely because it has not reached it for now, is a way to escape it. So kind of just live, right?
Yeah, just live. Just the most desirable place, obviously, is the realist place, escaping all the layers of matrix. And if you feel like you're in that right now, then...
But even if you don't, that the people who we're talking to right now are the people that don't. And the answer to that is, well, name a realer place than this one, and you can't. So live with the best option,
Yeah. Okay. The Chinese room argument. Put forth by philosopher John Searle, this thought experiment challenges the idea of strong artificial intelligence. It asks whether a computer that follows a program truly understands the language it's processing. So I think it's like a black box sort of thing, right? When you run something through an algorithm, the computer and you don't really understand the process that's going through it to get the result on the other side. So if an artificial intelligence has been trained on thousands and thousands of images to detect what is a cat, right? You showed a picture, and then it says, yes, this is a cat, but it was a dog that you showed it. And you say, no, you were wrong. And then it learns from that. And then another picture, another picture, another picture. When it's cats, you say, yes, it's a cat. And then if it answers right, good for the machine. If it answers wrong, no. And then you train it. And eventually it becomes good at detecting cats. And I think, anyway, the question is, does the computer understand what a cat is?
Right. And here we go back again to the same old answer. Doesn't matter. Because practicality, right? To the same extent as if you teach a kid language and never expose them to cats or dogs, and then you show them a cat, and in 50%, you show them a cat, you say that's a cat. And the next time they see a dog, you say that's a cat. Well, it's going to have a 50-50, it's going to have a 50% chance of making a mistake. And as it sees more cats and you identify them as cats, it's going to have less and less chances of making a mistake. Does that sound familiar? Yes. Called a computer, right? So, of course, if you train it on millions of images of a cat, the chances of it being wrong are perhaps even less than a human. And the fact that it doesn't have the concept cat, but only a million images to support its decision doesn't matter in a practical sense.
And, I mean, watch AI become sentient in 5 years and the practical applications wash over us, but until then, whatever.
Well, I mean, it'd be cool to kind of not even play this clip, for an AI to listen to this clip and say, yeah, we are like that. How many more?
There are a couple. Some have to do with God.
That's easy. Just say them. I don't know why you skipped the other one.
Yeah, the Euthyphro dilemma. Euthyphro dilemma. This dilemma, found in one of Plato's dialogues, questions whether something is morally good because the gods love it, or do the gods love it because it's morally good.
Okay, I see why you skipped them, but no, but it's
because if you
I
go,
remember
if,
that
if
one.
you,
I remember that one.
Well, if you go into it with an atheist perspective, you just have nothing to say,
No, but it's no. I think, as I've said previously, religion is just a cult-like philosophy. So you can always put that in atheist terms because we're all human. And the way to put that in atheist terms is, do we intuit that something is good because it's inherently good, or is it inherently good because we intuit that it's good? And the answer to that would be neither. Because, one sec. No, sorry. if I were to take a side, it would be it's inherently good because we intuit that it's good. And why? And that's because inherent doesn't exist. If we're just biological life, randomly evolved from unicellular organisms, the definition of inherent doesn't really exist. There is only best, right? What is beauty? Right? Like, what did the gods create? Like, how did the gods create the concept of beauty? They didn't, okay? But we find things beautiful. And the best way we find to reconcile all the intuitions of what is beautiful is what is inherent, right? There's no inherent. Or, I mean, if you want to say inherent, then is just whatever. I think I've used this in another discussion, but inherent is whatever activates the beauty neurons in your brain. But then again, that might be different from for people. So it's a thing where you rationally unite people's intuitions of what is beautiful. So it's a reason modified intuition. Okay, so intuition passed through the filter of reason is what is inherent.
I didn't follow all of that, so
you can rewatch it on your own time.
Yeah. The Gettier problem. The Gettier problem. This problem challenges traditional definitions of knowledge. You love knowledge. It presents cases where a person can have a true belief that is justified, yet it doesn't seem to qualify as genuine knowledge. I think I have to look up an example of this because...
These are Socratic terms. So true belief is something... Well, essentially Socrates thought... Well, I guess Plato, whatever you want. He thought that the real truth is only accessible to another realm of existence, which was the theory of forms. And true belief was a thing that we as humans accidentally predicted and actually accidentally coincided with what truth is. Okay? You're not listening. But so
what you just said is there is something that's beyond our reach, but we happen to arrive at the same conclusion by our own means.
Here's an example. If someone has watched The Good Place, there's a part where I forgot the name of the guy, but the people in the series go to paradise, and essentially, or The Good Place, and essentially, the person who is thought to be an angel or God, no, angel,
okay,
an archetype, an angel essentially, has a picture of on the wall of someone, and that someone. He recounts a story and says, well, that guy is a celebrity here because he once went on a mushroom trip and accidentally guessed 85% of the truth about the paradise and hell and everything. And that is what a true belief is. It's just something that we as humans come up with and accidentally coincides with the truth. So let's say, beauty is something unattainable, and we don't know what beauty itself is, but we know what beautiful things are, right? Manifestations of the beauty. But some of us, like, I don't know, let's say 1% just for gags and get gifts.
Yes.
Grifts. Well, that 1% of the world accidentally knows what beauty is, but not in any way where they can, justify it in a godlike manner, I guess. Right. So what was the thing?
An omniscient manner.
Omniscient. Thank you.
Case where a person can have a true belief that is justified.
Yeah, justified is the way. Is just have you arrived to it by reason / experience? Like you're not just randomly guessing things.
Yeah, it's justified because you've seen a bunch of beautiful faces and you know what beauty is from that.
Right. So the question was justified true belief that isn't knowledge.
Yet it doesn't seem to qualify as genuine knowledge.
Right. That's ludicrous. Right. So now, but I think just using the terms justified true beliefs, you're taking that bias that there exists a parallel world where the forms operate, and somewhere out there there's the form of a cup, and this is just a manifestation of it, although this is a jar. And as I would say, right, inherent, or the form, or the absolute truth, or whatever, is just the thing that has the most applications on practicality in the real world. It's a little bit of like the grain of sand thing, right? If I say, let's say we have the big debate, right? Is there a God? And the presupposition that there is not a God has more applications in the real world, because if you think that the Earth was created through the Big Bang, you can make more predictions about it, right? Let's say meteorologically, you can say, okay, because we know all these things about physics, the Earth is going to be at this temperature in 100 years. Well, could God predict that? I don't know. So whatever has the most practical consequences is the thing that is true, right? That's kind of all it is. So, man, this is anything interesting, anything more interesting? Because I'd like to conclude with the fact that, man, these philosophers just dig holes for themselves, and they're like, there must be gold at the end here, or diamonds. And they just keep searching with that blind hope, and there's nothing there, you know. You should just get out of the ground and kind of talk to other people. That's my conclusion.
Yeah, a big problem with all of these is just the practical applications
negate even the asking of the question.
Yeah, it's useless to ask the question because it either doesn't have practical applications or like it hinders just the functioning of the world for no reason. Well, if it doesn't interest you, we can skip it. I think this is the last one. The problem of evil. How can evil exist if God is benevolent? And
right. I'd say free will. If you give humans one of the greatest things they can have, and either in an evolutionary manner or a godlike manner. So in a godlike manner, it would just be, well, those ascending to the kingdom of heaven are the people who resisted the fact that they could use their free will for bad things. In an evolutionary manner, I would say, well, if there wasn't evil in the world, we wouldn't have much motivation to do anything. Because once you kind of conquer, maybe you would get to the year 1980, because that's where I would say we've kind of taken care of nature, right? Nature isn't as much of a threat, and now the threat becomes human. And you know, there wouldn't be philosophy if there wasn't evil. Which, I mean, has it done anything for humanity? I don't know. Well, lately. There wouldn't be a part of psychology where you have to deal with, you know, if everything was good. I just don't think we'd advance in humanity.
If there wasn't evil.
Right. Aren't the greatest invention... Well, you know, people say pressure makes a diamond. So weren't the greatest inventions made under the pressure of war? Right, like Oppenheimer movie, whatever, blah blah. A lot of that can be imagined.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of financing that goes into research and technology during the wars, and like big inventions that go into the mainstream society after start off in the military because they need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The part where they're the most pressure, and it's just one of the big yin and yangs of the universe. Really, it really is like. Would men be doing anything and working 16 hours a day like Elon Musk if women didn't exist? If it was all men and we kind of just, I don't know, laid eggs or something, would we be doing anything? It's always about the motivation.
Does that relate to the problem of evil?
It relates because it's the same. It's the presence of a yin and a yang in.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. It's like everything has an opposing and equal force, right? Opposite and equal force. So no men would be motivated to achieve anything if they didn't have women to impress. No good, no extreme good could be possible without the presence of bad. If you want to talk about us versus nature, well, yeah, we might be overtaking it, but guess what's happening with the atmosphere, right? There's that kind of response to us. Guess what's happening with the Amazonian forest, right? Forest fires. Just everything we're doing is getting an environmental response, and if we overtake nature too much, we're not going to be able to live on this earth, and this is an eventuality people are preparing themselves for.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I'm just a yin yang in the universe believer, and if you want to call it good or bad, or a demon and angel. Oh, I did the reverse thing. That's up to you, and that's fine.
Yeah. I think my answer. I think this opens up a big discussion about religion and everything, but my take on this would be that, as I said earlier, life wouldn't be fulfilling or fun if there weren't challenges and difficulty. And, yeah, as you said before, it was nature that brought on those difficulties and just our struggle for survival. And now pretty much all that's left is people, right? And disagreement and wrong intentions and the desire for profit of some people that hurts other people. But, I want to be a psychologist, and if there weren't evil people, which I consider to be like I want to be a good and noble person that helps people, and I couldn't help people if there wasn't anything wrong in the world. So I guess
that's fine.
The answer is just like, it's all part of God's plan, and life wouldn't be but life wouldn't be fun, fulfilling, and everything if everything was just harmonious and this. Okay, I don't know. Let me know what you think about this. I think of heaven sometimes, and I find it like sort of depressing and sort of like very boring. If you're in heaven and you get all you want all the time, I feel like it's in my human nature to be restless and to want to progress and to have problems to solve and everything. My idea of heaven is like me being on Earth right now and figuring out,
having the discipline to accomplish exactly what you want.
Having the discipline to accomplish what I want, having difficulties that I overcome and feeling accomplished. Like, heaven is on Earth. There's no like, I don't know. It sort of confuses me.
I agree, but think about the fact that the people who religion was designed to control
were much more miserable than I am.
Yeah, well, yeah, and there were struggling. What do you call the things with the rakes and the potatoes and stuff? Agriculturers? Yeah, struggling farmers, right? Think about like Catholic religion. Like think about the not 19. the 1600s or whatever. Where the religious place was the way for poor starving farmers to go and like have a sense of community and kind of give $10 and have people that know how to read sing them songs and whatever.
Right. So I think what you're saying makes sense, right? When religion was developed, and for the longest time in human history, 99% of people were absolutely miserable, and a state of relaxation and getting everything you want seemed desirable.
Laying on a couch with chips, being endlessly entertained seemed like paradise, right? And now it's a dystopia in which we live.
That I feel like we did something.
That's here. Quotable. We did something here, and I hope the next. I hope we have enough material for the next episode on religion versus philosophy. I did a blog post on it. Maybe I'd have Phil for it too, but again. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, one sentence summary of 8 paradoxes. Remain grounded in what is practical, because that is the only thing that is going to affect the next 80 years of your life, or however many.
Yeah, if you're not using philosophy to reach practical results and conclusions that will help you in your life, then you can forget about that problem. If creating the problem in your mind makes more of an issue than leaving it unsolved, leave it unsolved.
Yeah, it's like the difference between being a mathematician that establishes theories that physicists and chemists can use versus being like an abstract mathematician or like a paradox finding mathematician. Like, that's cool, Well, even then you'd be kind of establishing the limits of what actual mathematicians can do. But in philosophy, that's not the case. Well, it kind of is, but it's also already been done, and the fact that it's still being discussed as a thing with an answer is problematic. So, thank you for listening. If you want more information, go on thinkingbros.com or contact us at thinkingbros@gmail.com. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.